Let's talk about Elon Musk. You know the name. He's one of the most powerful, most talked about figures of our time. A name that's basically synonymous with innovation. But his career is also filled with moments and actions that have raised some really serious ethical questions. And today, that's what we're going to explore.
For so many people, he's the real-life Tony Stark, right? He's the brain behind these world-changing companies, Tesla and SpaceX, pushing us all towards electric cars and literally shooting for the stars. It's a really powerful and, let's be honest, very familiar image.
But is that the whole picture? As we're about to see, there's a whole other side to this story. We're talking about a pattern of behavior and business practices that has drawn a ton of criticism and a whole lot of scrutiny.
And that brings us to the core argument from our source material, that behind this visionary genius, there lies what's been called a troubling disregard for some pretty fundamental things, like ethics, transparency, and even the well-being of other people. So let's break down exactly what those concerns are.
Okay, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the gap between his public words and reality. Then, we'll take a look inside his factories, explore the hidden costs of all this progress, dig into some potential conflicts of interest, and finally, we'll talk about the safety of his products out on our streets.
First up, the disconnect between what Elon Musk says and what actually happens. And we have to start with one of the most powerful tools he has, his social media account.
You probably remember this one, the infamous funding secured tweet from back in August 2018. Just that one single post sent Tesla's stock into an absolute frenzy. The only problem? Well, the funding wasn't actually secured. The fallout was huge, leading directly to the SEC charging him with securities fraud and forcing him to step down as Tesla's chairman.
And what did this cost him personally out of his own pocket? As part of that SEC settlement, he got hit with a $20 million fine. But here's the thing. Critics argue this wasn't just some one-off mistake. They point to what they see as a pattern of really optimistic claims, promising huge production numbers that just weren't met, downplaying some very real delays, and kind of glossing over quality control problems. For some, this all starts to look a lot like market manipulation. And then there's his history of lashing out at people who criticize him. In a really notorious incident, he publicly and with zero evidence called one of the heroic divers from the Thai cave rescue a pedo guy. It was a shocking attack that ended up in a defamation lawsuit.
Now, this alleged pattern of behavior seems to extend from his public persona right into what's reportedly happening inside his own companies. So let's turn our attention to the concerns around labor conditions and worker safety.
A report from 2017 revealed a really telling statistic. The injury rate at Tesla's main factory was significantly higher than the auto industry average. And this just fueled concerns that maybe workers' safety was taking a back seat to the immense pressure to hit those ambitious production goals.
And the criticism goes way beyond just injuries. We're talking reports of excessive hours, and Musk being a very vocal opponent of unions. In fact, the National Labor Relations Board actually ruled that Tesla violated labor laws, pointing to a tweet from Musk that sure sounded like a threat to take away stock options if workers unionized. And all of this is on top of a history of doing mass layoffs with very little warning.
All right, so for a company whose entire brand is built on a green mission, our third area of concern here might seem, well, a little ironic. We're talking about the environmental and ethical price of progress.
You know, the contrast here is pretty stark. On one hand, you have Tesla's mission statement, to accelerate our transition to sustainable energy. But critics point to the reality, which they say includes environmental damage from mining lithium, serious human rights concerns in its cobalt supply chain, and even fines for not disposing of hazardous waste correctly.
Next up, we're going to shift our focus to the business deals themselves and a perceived lack of transparency. Actions that critics say really blur the line between what's good for the company and what's good for Musk personally.
So, to really get the next point, we have to be clear on what a conflict of interest actually is. It's pretty simple, really. It's when someone's personal interests, like their family or their own investments, could potentially influence or corrupt their professional decisions.
And a perfect case study of this is the SolarCity acquisition. Back in 2016, Tesla bought this struggling solar company for $2.6 billion. The problem? Well, SolarCity was founded by Musk's cousins, and Musk himself happened to be its largest shareholder. This kicked off a massive lawsuit from shareholders who basically claimed the deal wasn't for Tesla's benefit at all, but was a bailout to help Musk and his family.
And that brings us to our final section, and it might just be the most visible controversy of them all: the safety of Tesla's products out on our actual streets, especially when it comes to those automated driving features.
The way Tesla rolled out its full self-driving software is, to critics, just deeply concerning. Think about this process.
The company releases this beta software to customers who have zero special training, and in doing so, they're basically using public roads and public drivers as this giant, real-world lab for unproven technology.
And it's not just about the beta testing. Musk has been accused time and time again of overstating what autopilot and FSD can actually do, which could lead to drivers becoming complacent. Critics also point to a slow response on safety recalls, with Tesla often choosing to send a software update over the air for problems that many experts say should really require a physical recall. So when you pull back and look at the whole picture, these don't really seem like a bunch of random, isolated incidents. They start to look like a pattern that touches on public trust, the welfare of employees, how his companies are run, and ultimately the safety of his customers, all in this relentless drive to hit some incredibly ambitious goal.
And this all leaves us with a huge, crucial question. Look, Elon Musk is undeniably an innovator who is pushing boundaries. But when one single person has this much influence over our technology, our markets, and even our lives, where do we, as a society, draw the line between bold, game-changing innovation and just plain irresponsibility?